The hell you are. This isn't a commercial flight, lady. You need a ticket. You need clearance.
Make me.
I grinded 20 years to stand on these steps. You're just in the way.
Good evening. I'm Captain Marcus Brooks. After 28 years in the skies, I thought I'd seen every kind of passenger. I was wrong. Tonight's story didn't happen on my aircraft, but a friend in private aviation told it to me years ago, and I've never forgotten it. This is the story of a freezing Tuesday at a private terminal outside Denver and a man who mistook a hoodie for weakness. Money screams, wealth whispers, and on this particular Tuesday, Brandon Kessler was screaming at the top of his lungs. The private terminal at Centennial Airport smelled like espresso and expensive cologne, the specific scent of new, impatient money. Outside, a Colorado front had dropped the temperature into the teens. Inside, the climate sat at a controlled 72. Brandon adjusted the lapels of his tailored suit, letting his watch slide just visible enough to catch light. He was 40, gym fit, pacing the lounge, barking into his phone. "I told you holding the position was a mistake, Marcus. No relation to our narrator, just a name. I don't care about the hearing. I'm flying to Aspen to close this deal. By Monday we're liquid." He hung up and surveyed the lounge with a sneer. After a decade grinding at mid-tier investment firms, he'd finally landed a seat on a private charter to the biggest fintech summit of the year. In his mind, he wasn't a passenger. He was the main character. That's when he saw her. A black woman, early 50s, sitting alone in a corner armchair, a slate-gray oversized hoodie, worn sneakers, hair in a simple bun, reading a paperback, sipping tea from a paper cup. Brandon frowned, glanced at the exclusive entry, then back at her. This lounge was for elite charter clients. She looked like she was waiting for a bus. He walked over, loafers clicking sharp against the marble. "Excuse me," he said, condescension thick in his voice. "Staff break rooms down the hall by the hangars. This area is for ticketed priority clients." The woman looked up, dark eyes calm, entirely unimpressed. "I'm comfortable right here, thank you." Brandon laughed, sharp and incredulous, looking for an audience. "Look, I don't know who let you wait in here for your shift, but I need this corner for a call. Go find wherever it is your people wait." She closed her book slowly. "My people? Support staff, cleaners, whatever." He waved a hand. "I'm flying out in 20 minutes. I don't need the distraction." "Security's tight here," she agreed, sipping her tea. "Which is why I'm surprised you're shouting." "I'm not shouting." Brandon's voice rose an octave. "I'm a platinum member. I paid $11,000 for this seat." "That's a lot of money," she said, unbothered. "It's more than you'll make in 6 months. Now move. I need that outlet." She glanced at it, then at him, and reopened her book. "There's an outlet behind you, sir. Plenty of empty chairs." His face flushed crimson. He leaned down, invading her space. "I'll find the concierge and have you removed. Keep sitting there and see what happens to your job." She offered a faint, almost sad smile. "Go ahead." He marched to the front desk. A young staffer named Priya looked up, and when she followed his pointing finger to the woman in the hoodie, her face went pale. "Sir," Priya said, voice trembling, "we cannot remove her." "What do you mean you can't?" "You don't understand," Priya pleaded, clearly more afraid of the woman overhearing than of Brandon himself. "Diversity hire, right? Can't touch her. Fine, I'll handle it myself." The glass doors to the tarmac slid open. A pilot in a pressed uniform announced boarding for the Aspen charter. Brandon smirked at the woman as he grabbed his duffel and shoved past her chair, deliberately clipping her shoulder. She didn't flinch. She stood, tucked her book under her arm, and followed him out. The Colorado wind cut through Brandon's suit the moment he stepped outside. Ahead sat the aircraft, a sleek Gulfstream, silver, gleaming like a missile built for luxury. He heard sneakers on the tarmac behind him and spun around. "Whoa, where do you think you're going?" "To the plane," the woman said. "The hell you are," he laughed, calling out to the ground crew. "Hey, you've got a stowaway." A ramp agent glanced up, saw her, and immediately looked back down, continuing his work without a word. Brandon took it for incompetence. "This is a private charter," he said, blocking the air stairs. "You need clearance. You need to not look like you slept in a parking garage." "I have clearance," she said calmly. "Let me see your boarding pass." "I don't have one." "Exactly." He threw his hands up. "You're delusional. Probably here to scrub the lavatory before we leave. You're late. Go back inside." He planted himself on the first step, physically blocking her. "Move," she said, quiet, but there was an edge in it now. "Make me. I grinded 20 years to stand on these steps. You're just in the way." The captain appeared at the top of the stairs, silver-haired, 4 stripes, a man named Captain Alvarez. "Is there a problem down there?" "Just handling security," Brandon said, flashing a confident smile. "This woman's trying to force her way on. You might want to call the police." Alvarez looked down, at Brandon, then at the woman, and his expression changed instantly. "Ma'am," he said, voice shifting to deference, Is everything all right? Don't call her ma'am like that, Cap, Brandon scoffed. She's nobody. The woman looked up at Alvarez. Slight delay, Captain. This gentleman seems to think he's running security today. She gave him a nearly imperceptible shake of her head. Let him dig his own hole. Alvarez swallowed. Sir, please board the aircraft. We need to keep to schedule. Brandon smirked at the woman, triumphant, and trotted up the stairs past the captain. Good man. I'll tip you well. Keep her off. He never saw Alvarez bow his head slightly and gesture for her to follow. The Gulfstream's interior was cream leather, walnut trim, soft, ambient lighting. Brandon threw his bag onto a side seat and claimed the forward-facing master chair without asking, the one usually reserved for the aircraft's owner. A flight attendant named Denise approached with hot towels. Welcome aboard, Mr. Kessler. Something to drink before takeoff? Scotch, top shelf, double. He pulled out his phone for a selfie, then lowered it as footsteps entered the cabin. The woman in the hoodie walked past him toward a private seating area in the rear. Hey, did you not hear the captain? He said stay off. She ignored him entirely, settling into a seat and opening her laptop. Not a consumer model, but a rugged, high-security machine. I am talking to you, Brandon shouted, the cabin acoustics making his voice sound crass and enormous. Denise rushed over. Mr. Kessler, please sit. We're preparing for taxi. Why is she here? I paid for a private experience, not a charity ride-along. She's on the manifest, sir, Denise said tightly. Manifest? What is she? A donation seat? He turned back toward the rear. Enjoy the ride, charity case. Try not to steal the silverware. The woman looked up over her glasses. Mr. Kessler, was it? Remember the name, he snapped, because I'm filing a complaint about you. I suggest, she said, voice even, you sit down and drink your scotch. You're disturbing the peace. He laughed at Denise for support and stormed back to his seat. Unbelievable. Ruins the whole aesthetic. Denise handed him his drink, hands slightly unsteady. Mr. Kessler, I'd strongly advise being respectful to the other passenger. Respect is earned, he muttered, downing half the glass. And judging by those shoes, she hasn't earned a dime. The engines spooled up. Captain Alvarez's voice came over the intercom. We're cleared for taxi. Flight time to Aspen, 3 hours 40 minutes. What Brandon didn't see. Denise walking to the rear, not toward the galley but toward the woman, crouching, whispering. The woman nodding, handing her a small black card. At 41,000 feet, the sky had turned deep purple. Brandon was on his third scotch, the alcohol stripping away whatever restraint he'd had left. Denise, he barked, rattling his empty glass. Where's dinner? Tell the pilot to smooth it out. Denise appeared, visibly stressed. Dinner shortly, sir. We're currently prioritizing a service request from the other passenger. Brandon froze. Excuse me? She requested tea and a light lunch. I'm preparing it now. You're prioritizing her over me? He stood, marching toward the rear cabin. The woman had her laptop open, typing rapidly, data scrolling across the screen too fast for him to read. He loomed over her table. Who are you? Who do you know at the charter company? Did you sleep with the dispatcher? She stopped typing. She removed her glasses and set them down, looking up at him with an intelligence that made something in his chest go cold. Remove your hand from my table, she said softly. Or what? You'll call the manager? I am the manager, sweetheart. I buy and sell companies like you by whatever tea this is. He grabbed her paper cup and crushed it, hot liquid splashing across the table and onto her hoodie. The cabin went silent. She looked at the stain. She didn't scream, didn't cry, just reached for a napkin and dabbed calmly at the mess. You've made a very significant mistake, she said. Not angry, factual, like a diagnosis. The mistake was letting you on this plane, Brandon retorted, wiping his hand on her headrest before swaggering back to his seat. He pulled up the flight tracker app on his tablet, watching the little airplane icon, and frowned. It wasn't pointing toward Aspen anymore. It was banking hard, northeast. He hit the call button repeatedly. Denise appeared, paler than before. Why are we turning? We're heading toward... Is that Denver? We just left Denver. Captain Alvarez has determined a diversion is necessary, Denise said carefully. Brandon laughed, clapping his hands. It's her. Security issue, right? Finally. He leaned back, satisfied. Forget dinner. Bring the champagne. We're celebrating. Not every day the trash gets taken out at 41,000 feet. In the back, the woman closed her laptop and picked up the cabin phone. Captain, status. 15 minutes out from Denver International, Mom, Alvarez said. Law enforcement standing by at the private hangars. Good. Make sure they know who the aggressor is. Understood. And, I'm sorry I didn't intervene sooner. You did exactly as instructed, Captain. Sometimes you let a man hang himself to make sure the knot holds tight. The Gulfstream dropped fast into Denver, taxiing not toward the main terminal, but a secluded high-security arrivals area. Brandon pressed his face to the window, delighted to see flashing lights, 2 marked police SUVs, and an unmarked black one. "They brought the welcoming committee for you, honey," he shouted toward the rear. The cabin door hissed open. 2 officers and a man in a dark suit climbed the stairs, expressions grim. Brandon extended a hand. "Officers, thank God. I'm Brandon Kessler. I chartered this flight. The problem's in the back. A woman, aggressive, trespassing." The lead officer ignored his hand entirely. "Captain Alvarez?" "Here, officer. We received a call regarding Level 3 flight crew interference and assault on a passenger." "That's right," Brandon interrupted. "She assaulted me." "Sir, step aside," the officer said. "Where is she?" The woman rose from the rear, walked up the aisle, and stopped, not in front of Brandon, but in front of the man in the suit. "Ms. Reyes," the man said, bowing his head. "The car's waiting." Brandon blinked. "Reyes?" She turned to the officer. "I'd like to press charges immediately." "Of course, Ms. Reyes." "Wait, who is Ms. Reyes?" Brandon stammered. She turned to face him fully, and the homeless vibe was gone entirely. In its place, the radiating stillness of someone who owned the room, the plane, and everything in it. "My name," she said, "is Diane Reyes. I am the CEO of Reyes Aviation Group." Brandon's mouth opened, no sound coming out. "I'm also the majority shareholder of Meridian Capital Partners, the firm financing your merger in Aspen." His knees went weak. "And," she added, gesturing at the cream leather cabin, "I own this aircraft personally. This isn't a fleet plane, Mr. Kessler. It's mine. I was flying it to Denver for maintenance when my scheduler mentioned a desperate client willing to pay a premium for a seat to Aspen. I said let him tag along. I believe in efficiency." Silence. Then, You own the jet." "I do. And I don't tolerate abuse of my staff. I don't tolerate racism. And I certainly don't tolerate men who think an $11,000 ticket buys them the right to treat human beings like garbage." She turned to the officer. "He threw hot tea on me. There are witnesses and stains to prove it. He disobeyed direct orders from the flight crew and was verbally abusive the entire flight." Handcuffs clicked open. "Brandon Kessler, you're under arrest." "You can't do this. I have a meeting in Aspen." "You already lost that meeting," Diane said, checking her watch. "I emailed the board at your firm and the partners in Aspen an hour ago. Meridian Capital is pulling all financing due to the unethical conduct of the lead negotiator. You tanked the deal. I signed its death certificate," she corrected. The fallout was swift and total. A grainy vertical video of Brandon berating Diane on the tarmac, filmed by a ground crew member, hit 14 million views in 6 hours. His firm terminated him within the day for gross misconduct. Meridian Capital audited every deal he'd ever touched. His wife filed for divorce, citing public humiliation. He sold his watch to pay a defense attorney and eventually accepted a plea deal, probation, community service, and a stipulation that landed him on a federal no-fly list. A year later, Brandon stood behind a rental car counter at a Denver airport at 11 at night, wearing an ill-fitting uniform, when a black platinum card slapped onto the counter. "Reservation for Reyes." He looked up. Diane Reyes stood there, unhurried, wrapped in a camel coat, entirely at peace. She read his name tag. He braced for the final blow. Mockery, a phone call to his manager, some last cruelty. It never came. "Safe travels, Samuel," she said gently. "No," corrected Brandon, and there was no anger in her eyes, only something quieter and heavier, pity. She turned and walked out into the rain, and Brandon understood, standing frozen behind the counter, that she hadn't needed to ruin him further. His punishment wasn't her anger, it was her indifference. To her, he was no longer a threat or even a nuisance. He was just the staff now. That's the story of Diane Reyes and the man who mistook a gray hoodie for weakness. Status is a mirage. The loudest person in a room is so often the weakest one in it, and the quietest is so often the one holding the keys to everything. At 35,000 feet, everyone wears the same seatbelt. It costs nothing to be kind to a stranger, but as Brandon learned, arrogance can cost you everything you have. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. There's always another flight, and always someone worth a second look.